Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be looking at two winter storms that could be impacting parts of the Rockies and then also stretching into the Midwest and Great Lakes states. Before we do get into the video, please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications so you never miss a video when I do upload a video. Now we start off here with the National Weather Service, and recently, actually, just a couple of minutes ago, winter weather advisories were added over the UP of Michigan, over parts of north central Wisconsin, and then parts of southeast Minnesota and northeast Iowa. Also, a big stretch here in the Rockies where you have winter weather advisories in these purples, and that's all associated with this second storm. Almost all of this is from the second storm, and those pinks that indicates winter storm warnings, those are mainly for the higher elevations, where you could be seeing a lot more snowfall than some of those lower elevations. Of course, all these areas are high in elevations. It's just that most of these areas are around 600 plus feet in elevation, but some of these areas are around 2,000 feet plus in elevation, and that leads them to get more snowfall than the surrounding areas in lower elevation. We have winter hard freeze warnings or freeze warnings here in effect for parts of northern Oklahoma and then also southeast Nevada. Then we also have winter weather, fire weather danger over parts of Southern California and then also parts of Northern California. We also have some air quality alerts in effect over parts of Central California. And then finally, we have some high wind warnings up here in the over upstate New York near the Great Lakes. Now, we're going to start talking about our two winter storms. We're going to look at the European model, and this is the European model in 3-hour increments. So basically around this model only goes around 144 hours out, but we're close enough to the event that will cover the entire span of the two storms, so it's fine for us to use this 3-hour increment model. Usually the European model is only in 6-hour increments, but this one is actually in 3-hour increments. Shows the same exact data, but it's more high resolution, and it also shows closer together increments, so it's a bit better than just the regular European. You see, we just have some snow showers over parts of the central Rockies, and then that next system is already moving in over parts of the northern Rockies. So more those winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings, mainly over parts of Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana, were from this system, and then those over down here were more from this system the latest system that's going to be tracking in right around Halloween. So this will be for tonight, and you see it starts to make its trek north and east as we start to get into the overnight hours of tonight. Some rain snow line starting to develop as it kind of brings up some moisture, and you're gonna see the European model is a bit more tame than the GFS model, but you see it's pulling up this Gulf moisture, so it's pulling up this Gulf moisture up from the Gulf, and that's leading it to kind of intensify. You'll see it's going to kind of intensify as it goes over these areas, especially on the GFS model. The GFS model shows that a bit more than the European model does. But you see, starts to move a bit faster, starts to intensify as it starts to bring up this Gulf moisture, and especially once it starts to go right north of the Gulf, this Gulf moisture is being pulled up north from the Gulf, and then you have that colder air on the backside of this. So you have some cold air on the backside of this, and that is leading to some snowfall on the backside. And then you have your warmer air down to the south right around here. Now, as we continue to move this along, you see how the heavy, intense snow over northwest Illinois and then into parts of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Green Bay. You guys are all affected with this system, and you see parts of the central Rockies starting to get that storm developed a little bit, and then this system starts to move out to the north, but then you start to see this southerly component again, more of that moisture coming up from the Gulf of Mexico. So this moisture is coming up from the Gulf of Mexico. You had this cold air intruding from parts of Canada. And when this happens, it's a classic setup for for uh for your system. So you have your warm sector right around here, and then you have your colder air all behind here, and uh then you're gonna have some rain on this front side, or on the back side, I mean, uh, to the south of this rain snow line, and snow to the north of this, and it's bringing down all this cold air. So as the system is moving through, it's bringing a dip in the jet stream, and that is leading to some very cold temperatures. If you actually watched my video about 3 or 4 days ago, we actually talked about how there could be 40-degree below average temperatures here over parts of the southern and central Rockies, and that's all associated with this system, this low pressure system. Not too organized at the moment, but this one is going to be the one that really intensifies. That this one is going to be bringing down all that cold air from Canada. And you're going to see in a little bit, this red line indicates the freezing line, and that's going to get all the way down to the US Mexico border. So some very chilly temperatures overnight for these areas. Now, as we move on, this will be for Tuesday night, and you see it's starting to enter the plains, into a little bit of the southern plains as well, and then it starts to really kind of get its act together. Rain snow line developing, and the system is spanning anywhere from about Utah to Illinois, and then it starts to really intensify. It's kind of stalling out over here, bringing up more of that Gulf moisture. The more time it has here, the stronger it will intensify, bring up Gulf moisture, and then snowfall on the backside. And snowfall amounts could be right around 6 to 12 inches. So some very intense snowfall amounts here, at least from the European model, and as well from the GFS model. The GFS is actually showing more than the European. Stalling out still, you see some heavier bands moving into northern Illinois, and then it starts to really move faster and faster by Wednesday night. And then this would be your Halloween. So your trick-or-treating forecast, gonna be some snow showers over parts of Illinois, potentially for Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, but it starts to really diminish, especially right around the Halloween trick-or-treating time at night. It starts to really diminish as that this system is kind of moving forward already. So you see, this is your warm sector all in here. This is all your warm air, and as it moves forward, it's gonna bring all that cold air with it. And you see, look at this freezing line all the way down to the US Mexico border. So that's some very chilly temperatures north of there. And then it starts to kind of this is some backside snow here. So models don't really pick this up very well. Mainly some higher resolution models, the NAM model, especially the HRRR model. These all pick up those snow bands, the backside snow. So I wouldn't really rely on this backside snow right here. It's not as definite as maybe some of those other main snow bands. Mainly because it's just backside, and those models really don't have a good grasp on those. You see some more snow showers. I wouldn't really count on these. Maybe some for the UP of Michigan and parts of northern Michigan. But you see, the rain snow line isn't really arrived at these areas. So if it is snowfall, probably not gonna stick. I mean, and also, it's probably going to be some wet snow at that, and it's probably going to melt in just a couple of minutes, potentially. Some heavier rain by Friday morning to parts of the northeast, mid-Atlantic, and then down to the southeast coast, and then it starts to move out by about Friday night, and then it's all said and done. Here's your total snowfall from these two systems, and you see a lot different from what we were seeing yesterday. Yesterday, this snow line was further north over parts of northeast Iowa, and then over parts of central and southern Wisconsin. Now the bullseye could be right west and south of Chicago. So southwest of Chicago, you could be seeing right around 6+ inches in those purples, and then if you get into those pinks, that's about 10 to 12 potentially more inches of snowfall. But then you see in this blue, that's about 2 to 5 inches. That's a good swath there, all the way from about the northern Rockies, from Montana down to Colorado, and then back up into Michigan, and then all the way into Canada. Now, we're going to look at your GFS model here. And you see, the GFS model only goes in 6-hour increments, unfortunately, so not as high resolution, and we can't really see what happens in between these increments, but you kind of have to imagine how the system goes through. So you have to kind of, it's kind of like you have to imagine what happens. You have to kind of picture it in your mind. You have to kind of imagine that it's gonna move north and east in between this 6-hour increment. So this definitely is a faster moving system than what the European model was showing, and you see it's a much more intense system than what the European model was showing. Some heavy severe thunderstorms on the warmer side, and then some very heavy snowfall and potentially some thunder snow with this, since it is so early in the season and we do have a lot of moisture to contend with. Usually what people don't understand is the earlier in the season, if you can get that cold air, you'll have a more intense snowstorm, most likely, than if you had it later in the year. Maybe it would probably be more intense than if it was in January or so, because in the fall and in the spring, and also in the summer, but you don't really see snowstorms in the summer, you have this a lot more moisture to contend with. So what happens is these systems, if you can get this cold air in place, which we do have for these systems according to these two models, you can have a more intense system. And if you actually looked at the upper levels of the GFS model, what it's showing some very intense vorticity. So that's most likely leading to why it's showing a lot of snowfall. But we really have to see what happens here. Two different, completely different situations. The GFS model is keeping Chicago completely out of this, and then it moves out to Canada by Tuesday morning. Now our next system starting to develop. You see a high pressure kind of pushing this system down, and that's also what's bringing all that cold air down to the western United States, and then it's gonna kind of move into the central plains, and then eventually into the northeast and mid-Atlantic states, but with less power. That's usually how it happens. And then as we continue to move on, by Wednesday morning, a lot more snowfall starting to develop over the central plains, and then you see it really intensifies, that Gulf moisture being pulled up as we talked about before, and then you see some very heavy snow bands. But again, the GFS keeping Chicago mostly out of this. So if you do live in Chicago, you're most likely not going to see rain if the GFS model does pan out. But if the European model, the more reliable model, usually does pan out, you'll probably see snowfall if this doesn't change. Also, one last thing to notice: these little lines, these are isobars, so this is lines of equal pressure. So the closer these are together, that means the higher the wind speeds. Because it is trying to get to equal pressure, so it's gonna up the wind speed. So basically, in between about the Oklahoma and Texas Panhandle and Arkansas, about central Arkansas, you could be seeing wind gusts around 40 to 50 miles per hour. So some very intense wind speeds right on the backside of this, and then kind of into the system as well. So maybe some blowing snow. I don't think it will be blizzard conditions though. Definitely probably not that intense. And then it kind of stalls out, moves a little bit north and east by Friday morning. So this would be right around your your trick or treating time. And you see heavy snow for the western part of Illinois, and then also little bit for parts of eastern Wisconsin, and then some wraparound snow. Again, not too reliable with those wraparound bands, but then it moves out and into the east by about midnight Friday. Now, here's your total snowfall from the GFS model, and you're seeing anywhere in those blues about 1/10 of an inch to 3 inches. Once you get into those purples, that's about 4 to 6, and then in those pinks, that's about 6 to 12, and then 12 plus in those greens. So you see a good swath of at least 1/10 of an inch. The GFS model shows anything that comes out of the sky, so most of this actually won't stick as the grounds are warmer, but definitely behind that cold shot, if we were to have another system, that some of that snow would more of that snow would stick, as we would have some colder temperatures. And then once you get into this bullseye area where you're seeing about 3 to 6 inches, and then some areas seeing around 6 to 12 plus inches of snow. So definitely something to look out for. A lot of snowfall here from the GFS model. And then finally, I want to show you the GEFS. So this is a combination of about 50 or so models, and same kind of colors as the European model, 2 to 6 inches in those blues, 6 to 12 about in those purples, and then 12 plus inches in those pinks. So you see, the GEFS kind of has that same area of most snowfall, but then of about 2 plus inches. But then the real bullseye, I mean, is over parts of the panhandle of Oklahoma, western Nebraska, or Kansas, I mean, and then eastern Colorado, where you could be seeing around 6 plus inches, and then also another patch of snowfall over parts of eastern Kansas, northern Missouri, western Illinois, and then southeast Iowa, and that's where you could be seeing 6 plus inches. Some areas nearing 12 inches according to the GEFS model. And again, that's a collection of a ton of models, of about 50 models. The GFS model is one of them. The GFS model has the most factors put into it, and it's usually the most reliable out of all of these ensemble models. But it shows that a good amount of these models are actually showing what a good amount of these models are actually showing, and it kind of helps you decipher and see if the GFS model is just being a bit weird and wacky on that day, or if this is actually something that could actually happen. Anyways, if you did enjoy that video, please consider liking the video. Also, consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you never miss one of my uploads. Anyway, guys, that was Eli the Weather Guy, and thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.